Okay, today is the 25th day of Tishrei, the 27th of October. It's also the yortzeit of the Berditchever, of Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, Sanegoran Shel Yisrael, the advocate of the Jewish people in the last few generations, who would always find something good to say about anybody, no matter who it was and what they were doing. He's also very famous for giving a new acronym for Ahava, for love. In his book, he doesn't, in Kedushas Levi, he doesn't write Hakadosh Baruch Hu, which is Hey Bet Hey. He calls it Or Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So he makes it in the light of the Blessed One. So it turns into Ahava. In any case, so we saw last time on Friday two parables for the distance, for the cause of the distance between the world of emanation and three lower worlds. That the world of emanation, we said, is pure consciousness of Hashem. There's only consciousness of Hashem. There's no consciousness of a separate being, of myself being separate. And the three lower worlds start from the fact that there is a consciousness of me being something separate from Hashem. So the first parable was from the tabernacle, and it's the masach, the curtain. And the second one we began to look at was the parable of the pile of stones, galavanim, that Jacob made between himself and Lavan. So we still I didn't explain something on Friday. The question is who's who here? Who represents the three lower worlds and who represents the higher world of emanation, of Atzilus? So surprisingly or not, in Kabbalah, Lavan, his father-in-law, he's the world of emanation. He's the world of Atzilus. And Yaakov, he's the one who penetrates into the three lower worlds. And there's many reasons for that. But the most important reason is that when Kabbalah looks at the biblical story, it doesn't just look at it from, and also in general, I've mentioned this many times, the Torah never tells us, or almost never tells us, that someone, the whole Bible, that someone is evil. It doesn't tell us that Lavan was a Russia. It doesn't say it. It doesn't say Esau was a Russia. It doesn't say those things. Why doesn't it say those things? First of all, because the Torah is not meant to be an
editorial, so to speak.
It's not a commentary on reality.
Okay.
It's the essence of reality. It's like where the reality was came from. It's like the blueprint.
What's
Essence, mahut. So the Torah is not telling us, it's not describing reality per se. It's not going to contradict reality, but it's not a historical document. In a historical document, someone may venture to add some commentary. This person was very evil, this person was like that, this person, I knew him, he was like this, he was like this. The Torah doesn't come from that point of view. The Torah is telling us how the world was created, even when it's not talking about creation, even when it's finished with the first 7 days.
Even if it's nothing like this.
Right. It's talking about the essence of things, the mahus, where everything comes from. So in the mahus, in the essence, Laban is not a bad guy. Laban, the person, may have been a very evil person, but in the Torah, he's an archetype. He's like some kind of symbol for something. And Lavan literally means white, and so we say he's Loven Ha'elyon. He's the higher whiteness. As that, he's like a source for Yaakov having to deal with this world. He presents him with challenges, but he's not. But he's not telling him to, fail. He's not trying to make him fail. He's giving him the challenges. He's telling him, look, for you to get along in this world, you're going to have to learn how to fend for yourself in this world. Good. Right. Same idea. That anybody who has anger, right. So anybody who's angry, says the Tanya, and this is based, the earliest source I've ever found for it is in the Tikkunei Zohar. It's in, I just happened to see it a couple of days ago, that's why I remember it's on page 120 or 121. There's no earlier source as far as I know, even though it sounds like something from the sages and the Rambam quotes it, but probably the earliest is the Tikkunei Zohar. For those who think that the Tikkunei Zohar was written before the Rambam. If not, then the Rambam is the first one that we know that said this, that anybody who's angry, it's as if he serves an idol. Why? Because if you're angry, it means that you don't accept that this world is run by God. So Lavan, he's also, so again, in this parable, Lavan, who's on one side, he represents the world of Atzilus here, the world of emanation. And Yaakov, surprisingly, he's the three lower worlds. And then he puts a pile of stones in between them, a galavanim, in order to separate the two. So now, says the Tzemach Tzedek, that these stones, in the book of formation, stones are letters. So we said already on Friday that letters are a translation from the higher world of emanation to the three lower worlds. Meaning, in the three lower worlds, things happen with letters. There's another thing that's very much connected to our Parsha this week. The Parsha this week is Noach. And the Baal Shem Tov takes Parshat Noach, and in what seems to be a very novel explanation, he says that everything the Parsha is talking about, the whole story of the Teva in Hebrew also means a word, is talking about language. So there's many different interpretations of his many statements about this. In fact, in Baal Shem Tov and the Torah, the Amud Tfilah, it's called, the pillar of prayer, is in Parshas Noach, and it's actually most of the first volume of Bereshis. It's like 120 pages out of 150, meaning there's very few other. It's an anthology of teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, taken from different books, but he has 120 pages on prayer, and most of them come from Parshat Noach. That's why he put it in Parshat Noach. He anthologized everything into Parshat Noach. So there's many different interpretations of what the Baal Shem Tov meant when he said that Bo'el HaTeva means to come into the word. That you have to bring Noach. Who's Noach? That's up for interpretation. You have to bring Noach as like your soul into the Teva. You have to put yourself in the words. That's the main teaching. But there's another small teaching that people are less aware of, that he explains what it means that 2 by 2 they came to Noach into the ark, into the word. Ark again means word. Teva means word in Hebrew. So what does it mean that they came 2 by 2, the animals? Because in another place it says they came 7 7. So we say that these were the kosher animals, those were the. But what does it mean? The Shnaim Shnaim. So the explanation that the Baal Shem Tov gives is that Shnaim means that there is the inner meaning of the word and the external meaning of the word. What does it mean? He says one is Elokim and one is Havaya. The external meaning of the word is what this word indicates in the world. You say table, shulchan, so that means, table, here it is. This is called the myth of the museum in modern philosophy. That you have a museum with different exhibits, and you have an exhibit with a table, and it says underneath, table, shulchan. Okay, that's the external meaning. But the real meaning is from Shem Havaya. How do we understand this? Elokim, the external meaning, is the teva, is the nature of something. The real meaning is the Havaya, the rachmim in it, the compassion in it. There's a revelation of Hashem inside every single object. It's like what the Alter Rebbe once asked his son, the Midler Rebbe, what did you daven with today? Meaning, what did you think of when you daven? What did you think of? So he said, I thought about Sovev and Memale. I thought about the encompassing light and the surrounding light and the inner light. The Alter Rebbe said, I davened with the stender. Meaning, I davened with the Amud Tfilah, literally, with the pillar of prayer that you pray on. What does that mean? It means that when you look at an object and you see the stender, so you can also sense the Havaya in it. There's also Havaya in it. It's not just the external object. It's not just what you're referencing in terms of the external meaning. In fact, the external meaning is external. It has meaning, but it doesn't make the world into something godly. So how do we come to all this? Because we said there are the letters that separate between the world of emanation and the world, the three lower worlds. So these letters, they're the ones who give the external word. They give so that we can express it, so we can even say it. So we have to have letters coming down. But in the higher world, there's also letters. But those letters, they relate to Havaya. They relate to Hashem's compassion, something entirely different. It's called the light and the vessel. Another way of saying it, that the name that we give, Shulchan, that's for the vessel. But that's not the name of the, it is also the name, but it's not the light. The light is something else. The light is something entirely different. A lot of times we say that the Or and the Kli are like masculine and feminine. That the feminine is nature. The feminine is how you reference things in the physical world. Those are the words that we use to reference things in the physical world. The masculine, and this is why it's called masculine in Hebrew, Zachar. You have to remember this. It's not trivial to know this. It's something you need to work on. You have to remember this. Like Reb Nachman used to say, "Tzich lizkor be'alma de'ate." You have to remember the world to come. You have to keep remembering it all the time, because it's not a simple thing to remember. Something that nobody has to tell you to remember. This is a table. It's ingrained in you. It's like right. That's what we're talking about. Okay. That they came zachar v'nekeva. I'm saying that they came 2 by 2, so they're male and female. The feminine is the name that everybody uses: shulchan, table. That you don't need to remember. That's ingrained. That's the feminine. The feminine is nature. It's the way everybody understands it. The zachar, the masculine, is what is very hard to remember. You have to work hard to get to it. And so what is this? This is the light of Havaya. That's something entirely different. And just, I don't know if anybody has a birthday in Cheshvan, but if you do, so yeah, he does. That's why I'm saying it now. If you have a birthday coming up, so one of the things you're supposed to do on your birthday is lizkor zichronot, like to remember what you did the past year, because there's a special segula on your birthday to be able to remember. So people think I'm supposed to remember all the things that I did. Sedel, that's the feminine part of it. The masculine part of it is to remember Hashem in everything that you did. And there's a special segula on your birthday that you're able. That's what it means, mazalo gover. That the chaya is called the mazal. That's the world of emanation in a person. To be able to remember how Hashem was present in everything that I did in the past year. In any case, so this is so surprisingly here, Lavan, he represents the world of Atzilus. He's the world of emanation, and Yaakov, who comes down into this world, he's the three lower worlds. And there's letters, meaning this pile of stones of boulders, that's separating the two of them, which is like transferring from spiritual language to physical language, from the language of Havaya, the language of God's compassion, from the masculine into the three lower worlds. The feminine, we said that what comes down into the feminine is the Malchus of Atzilus, the kingdom of emanation. The feminine comes down. And now he says it more clearly. He says, "V'chinyan mishlei Shlomo shilbish razin ilayin b'meshalim me'inyanim gashmim." And this is well known that Solomon, 256, that King Solomon, he was a master of explaining things. That's why everybody knew he was so wise. These people were very, very wise, but they have no way of transferring their wisdom to others. Nobody can appreciate how wise they are. But Solomon, he knew how to teach people. And the way you teach is you have to use many parables. How many parables? That he had 3,000 parables for every inyan, every issue that he wanted to teach someone. Why 3,000? Because there's 3,000 different levels of people. And each one he had a parable that he could understand. If you were a carpenter, he had something for you. If you were a scrivener, he had something for you. If you were a housewife, he had something for you. If you were just a child, he had something for you. And each one, according to his own understanding and level of understanding, and everything was very, very exact. His name even, right, he wrote Proverbs. Proverbs is another way for a parable, is another word, is a synonym for a parable. So everything there is written in parables, in Proverbs. And his name, even his name, Shlomo, comes from the same word, mashal. HaMashal. HaMashal. The parable. He's the parable of all parables, King Solomon. That's why, in the end, the entire world understands this, that if you want to popularize something, anything, you have to use parables. The best popularizer today, I think, is Brian Greene. He's a genius in finding very simple parables to explain very difficult physics. He's not the greatest physicist in the world, although he's in he's in the top ranks. But his genius is in his ability to explain very difficult concepts in ways. He was the first person that I finally understood E equals MC squared. Like, I understood it the way a physicist understands it, not the way that I understood it.
We had a class in college, a very good college, called Physics for Poets.
Yeah, for poets.
Right.
Right.
That's
so that's a genius,
yeah.
right? So it's genius to be able to find.
I never understood it. I never took it, but
Right.
now I understand it. Yeah.
So the idea here is that you take a very high issue, very difficult to grasp, and you enclose it, you bring it down using some parables of physical things that people are familiar with. Electricity was very, very difficult to peg. It was very difficult to understand. It took scientists over 100 years, 150 years to figure it out. Finally, when Maxwell got it had been more than 150 years of studying it, and they used to call it the occult science. Why occult? Occult is like magic, witchcraft, because they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't understand what in the world this force is, and certainly not how to quantify it. Eventually, somebody figured out that the way you need to explain this to simple people, so you can have electricians. Otherwise, imagine if in order to be an electrician, to put two wires together in your home, you had to study Maxwell's equations. You would never finish. Even simple equations. So eventually somebody figured out we're going to call it a current. And by current, we mean to use a parable of water running through a pipe. Now, if you understand the physics behind electricity, there's nothing flowing. Electrons don't go anywhere. There's nothing going on. There's no current. There's no such thing in the world. But that's how there's a voltage drop, which people understand like a waterfall. It's like all these crazy images. They don't exist in reality. But it works. And an electrician who's relatively a simple person who can't understand the full physics is not baffled by it. He knows pretty much what he's doing. Now, sometimes he's really baffled. You do these white bridges or really complex stuff in really strange configurations of resistors and transistors, and they get lost. Like, why is this working the way it's working? But it works. That's why they say, okay, today it's just a component, so you don't really have to understand how it works. But it's very, very complex. So you have to bring things down, and that's what the mind does. So our mind, our seichel, our intelligence is meant to take something that's abstract and incomprehensible and couch it in terms that we can understand. So that's what Solomon did. הרי אותיות אלו מעלימים ומסתירים מאור השכל, ומה שמושג מזה איזו הערה אין ארוך כלל לגבי עצם הרזין עילאין. So the letters that you use, they're used to conceal the real meaning. And the same thing is true when you're not explaining electricity. Same thing is true when you're explaining anything in divinity, anything in Chassidus. You have to use some kind of parable, but the wise person, he sits with the parable until he can strip the parable off the meaning, until he can come back to the meaning of Havaya. So the two animals that came, he sees the feminine, and he's waiting to see where's the masculine hiding. He's waiting to see, and usually it is that way, that the female is first, and then you only get to see the male if you're very patient. So you have to wait until the light appears. The light is not easy to get out of the vessel. It's very difficult to extract it. And usually there's only a residue left. Meaning in these parables, there's only a residue left of the thing that you really meant. Another person who was a genius in our generation, I think he was the genius in this, of stripping parables from the parable and going back to the light, was Reb Moshe Shapiro.
Oh, I haven't, yeah.
He's a real genius in this. And his students continue it, and I don't know if a lot of people know this, But Simcha Rotman was like the what's his name? Rotman, right? What's his name? Yeah, the guy who was leading the charge against the Supreme Court. So he's a frum guy. He's got a kippah sruga, but his brother is Haredi, and his brother was a Talmud of Moshe Shapiro, and he is brilliant.
How do you explain that? How would you?
No,
I'd love you to answer that. How do you? I know
What?
I read his stuff. But how do you?
Because he learned Chabad. Everything he says is based on the Alter Rebbe. Everything he learned was Chabad. Okay. But he always told his students, only learn, don't do what they do. Only learn their writings. Because he saw that in Chabad, that's where the language is. He has another student, what's his name? Inbal. Uriah Inbal. So he has a yeshiva of his own. It's called Bet Midrash Ivri in Rehavia. I don't know if he still has it. He went to Torat Chaim for a while. He also, but he's less. He's more independent. He tries to invent a language to strip the parable of the parable and trying to explain the meaning in his own language. And that's always doomed to failure, because there's a language, there's a Kabbalistic language that you need to use, and Chabad is very careful to only use the Kabbalistic language. Rav Kook didn't use the language, which is why nobody understands today what he said. The Maharal didn't use the language. He went back to philosophical language, which is also why people are lost. They don't know exactly what he means. The Zohar's language, the Arizal's language, is very exact. And so that's really the reference that you have to go back to. In any case, so these letters, what they're meant to do, they're the feminine aspect, they're the feminine animal, and they're meant to give you a way to grab the issue, the very abstract issue. And if you don't have that, then you can't transfer from the world of emanation down into the world of creation, formation, and action.
Normally the lady is normally in the background, like with Sarah, she's the
Right.
hidden. You start with the masculine, you're saying it's opposite.
Right. In the physical world with animals, it's always that you see the females, and the males are very hidden.
One man here, my grandfather.
Yeah, that's
shared
right.
book. Well, I was in the 30s. I told my father in Russia, I will come a day, you will talk to America, and you'll see people on the phone. In the 30s, there was a telephone in Russia.
Okay.
And he told them where he took this.
Who said this?
My grandfather.
Grandfather.